everyone. Welcome to Illuminating Leadership, where we spotlight amazing leaders from all walks of life and industry who share their experiences and their best tips with you, our listeners. So welcome. I'm your host, Beth Johnson, and I am here today with my guest, Ronda Ellsworth. Ronda serves as the operations manager for the one and only Lululemon based in Washington State. Ronda's been with the company for 13 years, and she gradually moved her way up the company from the time she started as a temp employee. So I cannot wait to hear the story of her evolution. Ronda is also wife to Bob and mom to three amazing kids, Miranda, Brittany, and Austin. So welcome, Ronda. It is so great to have you here today.
It's good to be here.
Awesome. All right. So to kick us off today, would you tell me a little bit more, go in depth about your role with Lululemon and either what drew you to it or to your company to begin with, and a little bit about your progression from temp to where you are today?
I was raising teenagers. I had left my previous job that I was at for 10 years to be at home with my kids for a couple of years while we were going through the teenage years, which was rough. And I had decided to go back to work. I was looking for a company that was similar to a company I worked for before, that was culture-based, believed in their people, and where I knew there was going to be some growth. And I ended up applying at a temp agency. I had never worked in a warehouse before, had always done kind of fallen into jobs, and they were more jobs just to help raise my family. And I ended up at Lululemon.
And now you said they're culture-based, they believe in people and growth. And I know you and I have had conversations offline about that. That's been very important to you. Can you tell me why? And can you tell me how they exemplify that on a daily basis?
One of the first things we do when people come into the company, whether they're with our temp agency or they become full-time employees, we talk to them about setting goals, and the company really supports their employees, whether their goals are inside the company or outside the company.
That is very cool. And it's not something that we find in a lot of companies, let alone within the walls of the building, right? But outside of the building. And in what ways do they support? Is it a work-life balance? Is it they support your family? Is it a family values? Do they support your PTO time?
It's everything. We change work schedules around for people. If they're going to school, we make sure that their work schedule works with their schooling. We support them on a personal level. Many times, the majority of our people who work for me are anywhere from 18 to 30. And a lot of times it's just being there to talk to them about what's going on in their lives and supporting them in any way that you can.
I love to hear that because I've been studying a great deal on what we call now the now generation or the next generation. And that it literally is the 18 to 32-year-old group. They take a lot of heat from people my age and older to say they're lazy, they're entitled, they ask for too much, they need their emotions coddled. And I find that to be exactly the opposite of all of that. I'm meeting some brilliant kids who are ready and willing to be loyal to a company, but they've watched my generation and the generation before me give everything we have to companies and end up without pensions, angry by retirements. They've seen kind of the downfall of the workplace for our generation. So without me saying much more, tell me how you work with that age group, why you find it beneficial to engage them, and what benefit that has to both them and you as their leader in the company.
First of all, a lot of people just in general don't have anyone that is not their family that they can talk to openly without judgment and just listen to them, help them get through whatever it is that they're trying to get through. I feel like at my age I have some life experience and that I can help them with. And I do. And even if it's just sitting in my office crying and getting through it.
Do you have higher retention numbers, you think, because they've got a leader that listens?
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have, I've been there for 13 years. I'm not the only one. There's a huge, and it's a warehouse job.
Mm-hmm. Right, right.
It's, and we have a lot of people that have been there 10 years, 8 years, they definitely get something out of being there.
Well, I agree. I mean, that speaks very highly because warehouse work is extremely difficult. And you don't hear a lot of stories about growth in that environment. And you tend to see a lot of transitioning, in and out and not as much retention. So first of all, congratulations and good for you, that you're using that experience that you mentioned and saying, listen, I've been there before, and it's incumbent on me to mentor the upcoming generation so that they don't have to learn the hard things the way I did.
Yes.
Right. So what would you say is the most difficult part and then the best part of working with your employees, and especially that generation?
I think the best part is they're amazing people. They're amazing people that are just trying to make it through life and do a good job. Most of them are, a part of our culture there is very direct feedback. Most of them are craving that,
Yeah.
and they just want to do a good job. I don't find that generation lazy at all.
Right. Okay. So tell me, what do you see from them in terms of a work ethic?
Very good work ethic, very willing to learn, willing to grow. Anything that the company will give to them as far as knowledge, they're willing to do it.
So I'm hearing you say that they're actually craving the mentorship. And once they get that, you can depend on them not only to be there and to do the work, but there's trust that's built between the two of you and loyalty and retention, right?
Yes. Yeah.
How do you feel as a leader? Let's go outside that generation. Do you think as a leader that every employee in every generation actually needs that?
Absolutely. I think every human needs that.
Why
Yeah.
did you use the word human?
I don't know.
I knew that question might catch you off guard, and I'm so tickled that you answered the way you did, because here's what I know about human-centric, culture-based companies. The good leaders, it's just intuitive. They don't have to stop and think. They're not sitting there judging that employee that called in the third time. They're looking at the human first and
Yeah.
understanding that they too are human, and that the bottom line will follow when they treat the human with compassion and empathy and understanding. Now, I said on the last podcast I did, I'm not talking about coddling someone who is genuinely
Mhm.
lazy and looking to take advantage of the system, but I'm talking about, like you said, recognizing the human first.
Yeah. Yeah. And most people I've found that have called in the third or fourth time, pulling them in my office and saying, "What is going on?" There's usually something going on, and employers need to start understanding that people have lives outside of work that sometimes spill over into their work life. That old thing about leaving your problems at the door,
Mm-hmm.
that's not realistic. It's not. And sometimes it spills into work, and it's okay because we are all human.
Right. You mentioned earlier and then just said something here that kind of tie in together, and that is communicating with the employee and that the company encourages you to check in frequently. So what does your check-in process, your one-on-one, your reviews, your annual reviews, what does that look like for an employee with Lululemon or on your team even?
So I have one-on-ones with my team leads once a week. I have one-on-ones with my data admins once every 2 weeks, and with my employees once a quarter. But I spend a lot of time out on the floor just talking to people too. That's like those one-on-ones are like our requirement to
Mm-hmm.
have, and that would be like in my office with the door closed, like specific time. But I am on the warehouse floor talking with people, checking in with people every day
Why is that important to you?
because I want to know them. I want them to know me, and I want them to trust me. And if something's going on in their lives, I want them to feel comfortable to come to my office and talk to me.
All right, so now I'm going to play devil's advocate. I don't like it, but I'm going to.
Okay.
What about the opposition thinker who says, and especially to women, and this is why I don't like the question, but I'm going to ask it so that our young leaders, our up and coming, our leaders that are listening understand there's a why behind your process, right? What about that guy that says, "Oh, you're just trying to be a mama. You're just coddling them, going out and like checking in on them and getting to know them." What would you say back to that?
I've actually had that
I'm not
happen.
surprised.
And I, first of all, I don't take it personally because I've seen what comes out of that. And there's been multiple times when things have happened in our work environment where I have to ask them to work overtime. And if they respect me and we have a relationship and I can explain to them why, if we have a connection, they're probably going to do it for me. And not for the company, but for me.
Correct. That's an amazing observation because John Maxwell, who is a leadership expert and author, and he has worked with heads of state internationally for years and years, talks about the importance of connection. And from first a human standpoint, because we're all missing that, especially from the pandemic forward, which is where the younger generation has kind of had to adapt. All of us have, but it's harder for them, this digital generation. The fact that human connection gets us where we need to go. And I don't mean from an advantage taking standpoint. I mean that when we realize the person next to us struggles the same way we do, understands who we are, then we're more likely to step up and work with them.
Exactly.
And you don't have to answer if you're not comfortable or you don't have a scenario, but do you have a story that you are willing to share relative to how you gave your time, your understanding to an employee that it served you both really well?
I can't speak to it
Okay.
like specific time. I've just seen the result of what that does for people. I've had people come into our building that are in really, really rough situations
Okay.
and leave our building in a better place, a much better place, and a much better human, just because they knew they were cared for.
Yeah. And when they come in from a rough place, it is often because they've been lost or there hasn't been someone on their side caring for them, and they know no different, right?
Absolutely.
That's Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So kind of shifting gears a little bit, what do you feel your governing leadership philosophy is and why?
I think that for me personally, it's caring for the whole person, making sure that I'm there for them when they need me, whether that's as a boss or a friend or someone to give them advice.
What would you say, or what's your best advice for leaders who struggle with that?
I've seen leaders like that. I think.
I think it's all too frequent that there are leaders like that. We're in the minority, and I'm trying to change that. And I know you are too.
Yeah. Take opportunities to learn, connect with people that you do know that have that strength, and spend as much time with them as you can, or lean on them. You know, I have we have leaders in our building that go, this is not my specialty. Go talk to Rhonda, you know? But
That's
then I
actually a
have
big,
things that I'm not good at either. And I
right?
send people to other leaders. And I think that's another thing that people need to learn to do is, you know, figure out what your strengths are, work on the things that you're not so strong at, and lean on the people that do have those strengths.
Beautiful way to sum it up. And it does go back to connection. We can't collaborate and collaborate well unless we're able to connect with the person beside us, unless we're able to say, like those leaders did before, that's not my specialty. I don't want to steer you the wrong way. Go to the expert on it.
Yeah.
Right. And they
Yeah.
obviously have a lot of trust in you to work with their team member.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
cool. Very cool. So again, switching gears, in your opinion, what do most businesses overlook when hiring or promoting leaders?
They overlook the human part of people. I think a lot of companies have gotten very education focused, and I think there are a lot of people out there that don't have a formal education that are amazing workers and can bring a lot to a company.
That's awesome. Have you seen in previous life, or maybe even within Lululemon, but somewhere in your career, someone who was promoted for a skill set or a degree that really was not a leader?
Absolutely. All the time.
You know, I have struggled with that through my whole career, watching that happen. And I'm on the same page with you, obviously. You look at the whole human. I have had some of the best employees were those who had no education, were pretty good, or maybe even excellent at the skill, but they had drive and hunger and motivation,
Yeah.
and they wanted someone to lead them, and they absorbed everything they could. And I still encourage them, take what you like and leave the rest, because
Yeah.
my leadership style might not be for you. And they were some of the best employees I ever had.
Yeah, exactly.
And that goes back to your story of they come in rough and they leave a more whole human.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like asking this question, and more people are talking about it. What is the difference to you? How do you differentiate managing versus leading?
To me, managing is because, like, obviously, there's a part of my job that has to be managing,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the like more technical part, I guess, of my job, tracking attendance, following up on issues, things like that. To me, that is management, like the actual work. Leading is the personal part of it, making sure that people are getting exactly what they need to be better people, whether that's when they're in the building with me or outside of the building in public. I want my people to be the same way they are in our building as they are when they leave for the day.
Why is that important? That's a very cool concept, actually.
I want our world to be a better place. My goal is to teach people to be compassionate and caring, and I want them to do that inside my building and outside of my building.
Awesome. Awesome. Rhonda, what's something that you have learned the hard way that you'd like to keep other leaders from having to learn the hard way? Is there a lesson that you can think of off the top of your head?
I think the biggest lesson is if you're going to be a compassionate leader,
It is a choice, let's be clear, right?
yeah, understand that you're not going to get through to everybody and don't take it personally when you come across someone that takes advantage of your compassion and caring and stuff like that, because it has nothing to do with you.
I love how you worded that. And I wonder if, do you think that some leaders fear being more vulnerable and putting themselves out there for fear of not being able to read the human across from them and being taken advantage of and looking dumb or not looking leader like?
Absolutely. Absolutely. But I also honestly believe that if we aren't vulnerable with our employees, they are not going to be vulnerable with us. You have to be an example.
Very well said. Very well said. Do you think that corporate leadership from where you began in some of your first jobs to where you are now, has it evolved or regressed, and in what ways?
I mean, for me, it's very much evolved. You know, part of the reason that I can lead the way that I do is that there are people within my company that believe my way of leadership is the right way to lead people through being vulnerable and compassionate and caring. And I I don't think I could lead the way that I do if my company didn't believe in that.
Does this come from the top down? Is there a
It
value or a
does.
philosophy that, okay, so it comes straight from your C-suite?
Yeah.
Is there one value that they've published or they continually repeat that you think makes Lululemon the success that it is today?
There are a lot of values
Yeah.
there. And I, you know, this is just a part of it. I mean, if you go on our website and look on the careers page, there's like tons of stuff, but there are also like when you join the company, I could take classes every day if I wanted to on how to become a better leader.
Really? Within the
Yeah.
company or
Yeah.
external or both?
Yeah. Within the company.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. So
Yeah.
that goes back to, you said in the beginning that you were looking for a culture-based company
Mm.
what believed in people, and we've really covered that in what we've talked about so far. This leads me to growth. You also mentioned that the growth potential was important to you. Tell me a little bit about that growth path. What did you do or experience within the walls of Lululemon and in your training opportunities that brought you from temp to operations manager? That's a journey.
It is. So, like I said, when I came into the company, I'd never worked in a warehouse setting. I immediately was put with somebody who was amazing. And she was my trainer, mentor for about 3 months. And we worked very closely together. And then I moved up to a lead position, a team lead position. One of the things that they do there is they move you from department to department like every 2 years. So
Intentionally.
intentionally.
Nice.
So I learned a lot over the years. I stayed a team lead intentionally for probably the first 9 years that I was there, and just until my kids were raised.
I was going to
um,
ask because I thought they had come to you and offered promotion before that, hadn't they?
Not offered. There were definitely opportunities
Okay.
that I could have applied for some higher up positions. And I chose not to because I just didn't think I had the time,
Right.
or the energy.
That's a fair statement right there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Raising kids and working, it is challenging.
Yes, it is. And then as my kids got older, I applied for a supervisor position. And then a couple of years ago, applied for an operations manager position. But definitely during that whole time, I was taking our leadership classes. I was taking our communication classes. I was taking advantage of, anything that I possibly could to continue growing and continue to do that. Continue to be a part of our diversity and inclusion program. I'm going back and I'm in school again.
You are? I didn't know
I
that.
am.
Congratulations.
I'm getting my HR certification.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, still trying to learn.
How important is that drive to learn as we progress throughout our career? And then I'll have a follow-up question to that in a second.
I personally think it's very important because I think it's really easy to get to a point, especially after you've been working in a company for a long time like I have. I think it's very easy to get to a point where you go, I just know it all, and I don't need to do what everyone else is doing because I've been here so long. you know.
That always works out well, doesn't it?
Yeah. And every time I take a class or am part of something, I walk away from it going, wow, I didn't realize that about myself. Or you're never too old to learn.
We've heard that all our lives, right? And it wasn't, I mean, I think I knew it, but not until I got to 50 and I thought, oh, there's some things I should know by now. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be learning until they close the lid, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So when you take those employees, young or, mature, whatever, when they walk in your door and they're in that rough state and they don't have belief in themselves or confidence in themselves, because nobody's ever challenged them or mentored them or helped them, right? How do you impart that knowledge to them that if they just create a desire to learn, that it can be incredibly beneficial to their confidence in addition to their growth?
I think it's a slow process sometimes because a lot of them don't even know that they need anything.
Right.
And I definitely start out with taking their cues and how far I can go in caring for them. And sometimes it's real slow. Sometimes it's a little bit faster, but just making sure that they know I care about them and empowering them. There are a lot of people that don't know how to have their own voice or speak up. From what I've seen, once you give people the ability to speak up and say, I don't like this, or I do like this, or simple things like don't talk to me that way. That empowers people. That gives people confidence.
Now, you and I know that. What would you say to a leader that's listening today and says, I am terrified to do that because I don't know if I was trained in a way that I could adequately respond or properly respond, or I fear losing control in my leadership role? How would you guide them or teach them that way of leadership?
I don't know that you can. One of the things I've done my whole career is I've never really looked at title. So I don't think my boss is any different than one of my employees that walked in yesterday. We're all people.
Yeah.
We've all got stuff going on outside of work. We've all got stuff going on inside of work. And and I think it's just really important to talk to people like people. If you
Yeah.
see somebody that is struggling with confidence, give it to them. Give them the ability to ask for what they need.
I love the phrase give it to them, because you're not you hear the word empower, and it makes some people feel like empowering someone else gives up control for me, when in fact empowering someone else empowers everybody. It grows, it strengthens a bond, right?
Yeah,
And you don't know that until you try it the first time, until you overcome your fear and go, okay, lay it out for me, tell me what's going on, even if it's me. And that's hard for people to do.
yeah,
But boy, what comes from it can be magical and
yeah,
change your perspective.
absolutely.
And you said at the very beginning, and I giggled with you because it is true. Sometimes I don't know if it's possible. And the only way you do know is if someone says, I am trying to do
Hmm.
better, to be better. If someone wants to sit across from you as a colleague and say, I, this is utter bullshit. I am never going to treat my employees this way. I learned this way, and this is the only way I want to lead moving forward. Well, then they've closed themselves off to learning and to growing and to think and to admitting there might be another way,
Yeah,
right? So on that note, because we've all had that one colleague, have you ever tell me a story about a colleague that you've had that, oh, just made it so hard to get along with them? And how did you get through that?
I've had a few. I'm trying not to give a whole lot away.
Sure.
Um,
And if
uh,
it's too difficult, yeah, just let me know.
yeah, we ended up on with an extended amount of time together
Mhm.
with just the two of us. And I think we both realized that we were just a lot alike. And we were both trying to protect and love our people. And
Right?
yeah, yeah. And
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
ended up actually being very close friends.
Really?
Yeah.
That's a thing of beauty. Because I too have found that, and I've talked with others who realized that when they got past that initial obstacle and dug a little deeper and tried to understand each other's aspirations and what the root of what their discontent or their anger, whatever that looked like, it was very similar to the other person.
Yeah.
In, like you said, trying to protect their people, or a fear of something, or histories that taught one leader to lead one way and another leader to lead another way, yet all towards the same goal,
Exactly.
right? That's very cool. I'm glad that you guys ended up close.
Yeah. Yes. Still are.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Um, okay, and so another kind of I'm all over the place for our listeners. I have all these questions
That's
and I
okay.
just pop them in when I think of them. Is there a pet peeve that you have about not Lululemon, but about your industry, or maybe about warehouse work? Something that if you had a voice were given a voice today, you would change in a heartbeat.
I think it's gotten better, but it was definitely a male-led
Mm.
industry. I would hope that we will continue to get better, because there is definitely an advantage to having women in a mostly male workforce.
Will you expound on that for me?
I think that women can bring something to an environment like that that is better. I think, at one point we had an all male leadership team in
Mm.
our building, and they're great people. They were great leaders, so nothing bad against them. But I think men can tend to, they've been taught to do a job and get it done. And I think when you bring more loving, caring, vulnerable environment into that, it brings a different environment.
Yeah, it's a
Where
whole different
people,
energy and a different vibe in your group, isn't it? When you kind of have
yeah,
those.
we're more of a family.
Yeah.
You know, my team, they watch out for each other, and they make sure that if there's someone on the team that's having a rough day, they support them. There are days that I don't even know that someone is struggling, until days later, because the team took care of them.
Wow. That has got to leave you feeling, granted, work is work and work can be very difficult, but on the whole, do you kind of go home thinking, whew, I'm so glad I'm here? Or when it's Monday, you think, all right, maybe I don't want to go in because I've got XYZ to handle. But knowing that you've got that support within your team and within your colleagues' team has got to make it easier.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I also know, you know, when I have stuff going on, I've gotten support at work from my teams and from my leadership team.
Amazing. One of the things I was thinking when you were talking about that, because I'm very much a proponent of women in the workplace, and I know that we have so much to offer. We can nurture as well as organize as well as multitask, though I don't encourage that. It's not good for your for your health or your mental health, but we're good at it. We've learned. We do bring that energy and that compassion and that understanding. This is around the boardroom table. Y'all, we don't have to be pissed off about this. Let's just have a conversation and sort it out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Everyone came from a mother, right? And so, and I don't dare to speak that everyone had a mother growing up, but there's always been a female influence in the world. And what I have found is when my male colleagues finally kind of connect with that and go, okay, she's not trying to pull one over me. She's actually trying to help.
Mm-hmm.
That they can connect, and then they start to communicate more and connect more with you. And it sounds like the result is for you've got that family environment now.
Yes. Yeah.
And a real family, right? Because do you see companies out there that say we're a family?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, right?
It's
And
not
then
like that.
no. In fact, most people, if they say they're a family, the potential employee runs for the hills, right? Going, I know what that's code for.
Yeah.
But yours genuinely feels like that. What a blessing.
Yeah.
Very cool. Rhonda, if you could give your 18-year-old self some advice, what would it be?
Trust your instincts. Speak up for yourself.
Have you
I
had a
didn't do
time?
that very well.
That's what I was going to ask. Um, you don't have to give me a specific time or an incident or anything, but what have you learned by not following your instinct?
I think I've missed out on opportunities. I also ended up in bad relationships
Mm.
and bad situations.
When you had the red flag, something was
Yep.
telling you don't do this, but you
Yep.
did it anyway.
Yeah.
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 And you said it early on in this podcast, when you're working with people and you can't get through to them, remember, it's their issue, not yours. Don't take it personally. It's not about you. And do you feel the same about following your instinct? Let's say you've got that gut feel in the workplace and you want to speak up to your upper leadership and say something that just eats away at you on a daily, but you're afraid of getting fired or being labeled or whatever. How would you coach people today to just do it anyway?
Usually when I'm coaching someone on that kind of thing, I make sure that they know that it might not turn out the way they want it to, and that it's okay. Like, however that person responds is okay. If what you say comes out wrong, you can always go back and fix it later. But also understand that somebody else's life experience might be triggered by what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't have anything to do with you. But make sure that that communication is clear. And if you feel like you have to follow up later, follow up later.
Right. Do you believe, I think from what it sounds like, there's nothing that you can't go back afterward and say, I meant to say this, I meant to do this came out wrong, and it doesn't make you look bad. In fact, it does just the opposite for me. It shows a person of integrity that says, wait a minute, I'm owning what I said. This is still important to me. I really need you to hear me. I understand if you don't agree, but I need to say this, right?
Yeah,
Would you agree?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I've done that multiple times.
I know. I just met with somebody yesterday that goes, I'm pretty sure I made way more mistakes than I did do anything right in my life.
Yeah.
And so that's a good question too. What do you think about mistakes? What's your theory, your philosophy on them?
I think you learn from them.
Yeah.
I think it's a great time to grow. For instance, I've been in those conversations where I've said something out of passion and had to go back the next day and explain, where I was coming from. And I feel like because of those conversations, I'm a much better communicator than I used to be.
Right.
And also, I know when to have the conversation. If I'm real worked up, might not be the best time to have that conversation. Maybe wait a day.
Yeah, I've had maybe a couple of those myself. Ugh. And that goes back to what you said earlier too, is reading the people. You said I am able to read my people and understand that today might not be the best day, or they're not ready to take this next step, or
Yeah.
or hear me talk about learning. Right?
Yeah.
So if you have someone who isn't naturally great at that, because I hear that all the time. How do I read people? How do I understand them? What's the best tip you could give them?
Get to know them.
Hmm.
If you know them well and you have a relationship with them, you will be able to know the minute that they're off. We have morning meetings every morning. It's a 15-minute just touch base. And I can stand in that room and look at all of my people's faces and know when one of them are off because I know them.
Because you know them. Now you talked earlier about being on the warehouse floor with them, right? So you've got
Mhm.
that. You're interacting during the day. You see how they respond to problems and challenges. You do your one-on-ones. You've got your performance reviews. Is there anything else, like a tip or something that you love to do that helps you get to know your people?
I think an easy one is in our morning meeting every day, we have a question of the day, and it can be anything, absolutely anything. What's your favorite food? What's a goal that you're working on? How many siblings do you have? Anything. And it opens people up and it gives you an opportunity to learn something about your people that you didn't know.
And that's 365 different questions a year. Imagine what you learn about a human being.
Yeah.
Okay, now that brings me to an article that I read yesterday, and this threw me for a loop. And I thought, I really got to think about this. Someone was writing about how the workplace has changed. And you and I know that when you get to know with someone, you can connect with them, and all the things we've talked about today. This author was talking about those type of exercises and people now not wanting to share as much with their employers because they've seen the abuse that comes afterwards, right? They've seen themselves being taken advantage of or chastised for admitting who they were, what they liked, what their desires were. And again, stopped me in my tracks because I've never had a problem with that. And I started thinking, is that a generational thing? Is that a post-pandemic issue. Do you have any insight on that, or have you heard any feedback like that yet?
No, but that makes me sad.
It makes me terribly sad.
Yeah, that makes me really sad. And those people should leave that company immediately.
Right.
If that's how they're being treated.
Oh, amen. Well, Rhonda, what do you feel is your greatest career accomplishment to date? What are you the most proud of that you've done?
I think the visible change that I've made in people's lives. I have a handful of people that I know that I was a part of helping them.
And that
And
makes
I'm pretty proud of going back to school.
I'm proud of you for everything, for all of it. Isn't that what matters when I always think when it's funeral time, we're going to be remembered more for how we treated people and the impact we had in other people's lives, positively, hopefully, than we are for any task or any deadline met or any job title.
Absolutely.
Right? Cool. Well, I've got just a couple more questions and then we are going to wrap it up. What do you hope to have accomplished by the time you retire?
I don't know that I have anything. I just want to keep doing what I'm doing and trying to make as big of an impact on people as I can. One of my big goals was getting me and my husband, to a point where he could be retired and actually enjoy life, because he worked to keep our family going for so long at a job that he really didn't enjoy. And I want him to be able to enjoy that. And that's where we are right now.
Yay.
So I have accomplished that. But more than anything is just making the biggest impact as I can.
And there is something to be said for what you just said. One, we know making the impact is very important. And it sounds like you are doing that every single day. I see too many people work themselves to the bone. And with the economy, we don't know what it looks like for retirement. But it can be easy to feel like gone are the days that I can retire at 55 or 60 and enjoy a life of leisure until 80 or 85, right? And so for my listeners, I feel like it's very important to be content in the moment, to do the very best you can, to not try to project the future and stress and have anxiety over the future, because I've seen too many people get to retirement and have a heart attack within a month.
Yeah.
Right. And that's scary. So, and that brings up I have so many questions, but I don't want to keep you for 3 hours. Rhonda, what do you do for fun, or to take care of yourself in pursuit of the all elusive work-life balance, which I know some people hate that phrase. I think personally it's very valuable, because if you don't take care of yourself, you're not going to be able to take care of your team, period.
Absolutely. And this is something that I struggle with. I spend as much time with my family as I can. I'm learning to disconnect when I'm at home. I still struggle with that. I work night shift, so it's during the time that I'm at home. The rest of everyone else is in the building working.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit harder to disconnect, but I'm working on it. I'm trying.
You're not alone. Every single person I talk to almost says that exact same thing. I struggle with that.
Yeah.
Do you think that comes from how we were raised, how we were taught early on?
Yes.
Yeah. You don't be lazy. You put your nose to the grindstone. You do put in overtime. You go above and beyond, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we learn that on the way up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So one last question then, what advice would you give to the up and coming leaders about that? And I'm kind of pre-answering, but do we drive them into the ground and say, give me your 10,000%, we're going to take care of you?
No. And I'm really good at coaching this. I'm not so good at following.
Understood.
Yeah. Like I said, it's a work in progress for me. Set boundaries. Learn to set boundaries.
And what does that mean to you when you say set boundaries?
To me, it's setting times that you're going to work. And when you are off work, give all of that time to your family, yourself, whatever it is that makes you happy, and voice those boundaries to your workplace. But you also have to be willing to stand up for them.
Exactly. And you're right. There is accountability in the voicing also. So you set the boundary, you make it a priority, and then you voice it to someone so that it's in the universe and that they know you're serious about it.
Yes.
Right. And how do you coach them to do that without sounding like what some of the leaders think today, which is spoiled and, oh, I can't believe they're not willing to work overtime for me. How do you coach that employee to verbalize that without that negative response? Or does it matter?
It matters.
Yeah.
I really don't. Again, that's their stuff.
Exactly.
It's not yours.
All right. Absolutely. Oh my gosh. I cannot thank you enough, Rhonda, for being with me today and for sharing your story. Are there any questions that I didn't ask or anything that you wanted to share that we didn't cover?
I don't think so. I feel like we covered everything that I kind of expected that we would cover.
Awesome. Well, listen, I want to thank you again. And for our listeners out there who say, I want to know a little bit more about this Lululemon company because they sound amazing, or they want to, and I will tell you their products are phenomenal as well. What's the website that they would visit to learn more about Lululemon?
Just lululemon.com.
And that's
we have a careers page. There's all kinds of information about our culture. Yeah, everything's on there that you could possibly want.
So that's where they go. They go, I don't know if this is real or not. They can go check it out for
along
themselves.
With our clothing.
Exactly. Well, once again, Rhonda, thank you for being such an amazing guest for us here today on Illuminating Leadership. And for all of our listeners, thank you for tuning in, and we will catch you on the next podcast. Bye for now.